All right, everybody. Last week we talked about subjects and predicates as being the two halves of a sentence that are both essential. In addition to subjects and predicates, there are what we call complements that kind of extend our understanding or our elaboration through subjects and predicates. So if we take a look at that, we open our exercises. Some sentences are complete with just a subject or with a subject, verb, and a modifier, such as the crowd cheered. And those are fine. However, they're by just being a subject and a predicate, or a simple subject and a simple predicate, you're not going to get that kind of in-depth sentence that's going to be really descriptive and really helpful for your audience. The meaning of many sentences, therefore, depends on additional words to flush out those ideas that start with the subject and the verb. To complete the predicate of many sentences, a writer must add complements. And notice the spelling, it's not complement as in a, how do you say, like a well wish or a positive word to somebody, but rather think of a compliment as something added on. It is a word or group of words that completes the meaning of the predicate of a sentence. So it's always, a complement is always in the predicate. And there are 5 different kinds of complements in our language. We have direct objects, indirect objects, objective complements, predicate nominatives, and predicate adjectives. Direct objects are the most common kind of complement, and they complete the meaning of action verbs by telling who or what receives the action. And so therefore, a direct object is a noun, pronoun, or group of words acting as a noun that receives the action of a transitive verb. So for instance, if mud and leaves clogged the gutters, mud and leaves is our subject, right? It's a dual, mud and leaves are both our combined subject. What did they do? They clogged. Who or what did they clog? The gutters. And that is a great way to determine the direct object of a sentence by asking whom or what if after the action verb. So if we have clogged, we ask clogged whom or what. What was clogged? Ah, yes, the gutters. After an action verb, if the sentence offers no answer, the action verb is intransitive and there is no direct object. So some of them may, like, for instance, the crowd cheered. We don't have a direct object there. We don't need to imply, we don't know what they cheered. A cheer, I would guess. Indirect objects. They can only be found in sentences that contain direct objects. So you cannot have an indirect object without having a direct object first. An indirect object, just like a direct object, is a noun or a pronoun, and it appears with a direct object and names the person or thing that something is given to or done for. That is different than direct, right? A direct object is the who or what is receiving the action. What is the action being done to? Indirect is who's receiving it. So they're common with verbs such as ask, bring, buy, give, lend, make, promise, show, teach, tell, and write. For example, NASA gave the astronauts a course in correction. So if I have to find a direct object first, right? There can be no indirect object without a direct. So I ask who or what gave. NASA gave who or what, rather. Excuse me. I say, oh, what did they give? Correction. To whom or for what? Or to or for what did they give? It was to the astronauts. To locate an indirect object, we first must be sure it contains a direct object. This one does, right? We said it contains correction. Then ask one of the questions after the verb, indirect object. To whom or what gave correction? To whom or for what? To avoid confusing an indirect and a direct object, always remember to ask the right question in the right order. First, you ask whom or what after the verb. Then, if you find a direct object, ask who, to or for whom, or to or for what after the direct object. So that question is asked to the direct object, not the verb. To find the indirect, it's in combination with the verb, indirect object rather, to find the indirect. If a sentence contains a direct object, then ask to or for whom, or to or from what after the verb. And I just said that. Why am I repeating myself? Because I really like grammar. So for instance, Pat gave Doug a model space shuttle. Pat is our subject. What did they do? Their action is gave. That's our verb. They gave who or what? They gave a shuttle, right? If we're breaking it down, space is modifying shuttle. We can just say shuttle. To whom or what did they give a shuttle? They gave it to Doug. Doug is our indirect object. Remember also that an indirect object almost always sits squarely between the verb and the direct object. In a sentence in a normal word order, it's never going to follow the direct object, nor will it ever be the object of the prepositions to or for. Our third part is our objective complements. While an indirect object almost always comes before a direct object, an objective complement will almost always follow a direct object. As its name implies, the objective complement complements or adds meaning to the direct object. So think of it as an adjective or noun that's furthering our direct object. An objective complement is an adjective or noun that appears with a direct object and describes or renames it. A sentence containing an objective complement may at first seem to have two direct objects. So it can be tricky that it seems like it's a direct object, but it's really describing the direct object or clarifying it. So identifying an objective complement is simplified when you know they occur only with such verbs as appoint, call, consider, declare, elect, judge, label, make, name, select, or think. So for example, I, our subject, did what? Called. Who or what did you call? Dave. What did you call them? A swimmer. The directors of the launch declared, what did they declare? It. What did they declare it? It was successful. So it's clarifying a little further our direct object or renaming it, right? Dave is a swimmer. There are two subject complements, and those are predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. Linking verbs require subject complements to complete their meaning. A subject complement is a noun, pronoun, or adjective that appears with a linking verb and tells something about the subject. There are two types: predicate nominatives, predicate adjectives. Predicate nominative is a really fancy way of saying it's a noun with a linking verb or pronoun. That's it. And a predicate adjective is an adjective. So let's look. Ann Pace became a scientist for NASA. What did Ann Pace become? Scientist. That's a thing, right? A scientist is a thing, so it's a predicate nominative. Whereas with a predicate adjective, we get the fireworks sounded loud. Loud is not a thing. Loudness is a thing. Loud, however, is an adjective that's describing firework, and it's coming describing the firework, right? Go ahead and complete this week's grammar exercises. If you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out.